we're going to get rolling. We've got just an absolutely, I think we got 185 registered attendees today, and they're growing fast. And as you know, energy people come and go a little bit, but great interest in having you two gentlemen today. North Dakota Petroleum Council, in partnership with our good friends of the Petroleum Association of Wyoming and Pete Obermuller. So we're going to get rolling. I'm going to do a little housekeeping and then introduce Senator Hoeven, and then Pete will take over and introduce Senator Barrasso. And we've got time. We got a hard stop at about 10:45. So number one, we'll be recording. Number two, for all of the non-speakers, please mute your mics. So we're honored to have the two senators together today in Washington. Turn off your cameras if you're not a presenter. We do have a lot of media today. Interesting, Pete. We got a lot of Wyoming media, so congratulations on intriguing that Wyoming meeting. And if you've got questions, we're pretty good at this, so use that chat room to put your questions in there, and Pete and I will feed them to the senators. We're going to look for get through a lot of questions. We've got a lot of good issues to talk about today, and I know you gentlemen have a big meeting a big discussion with some of the federal regulators in your energy committee tomorrow. So with that, it's my honor to introduce our good friend, U.S. Senator John Hoeven. He's been in the U.S. Senate since 2011. He was a North Dakota governor for 10 years prior to that, and a champion of the Bakken, and a champion of business and energy in North Dakota. He is serves on the Senate Energy and Natural Resources Committee. He's the ranking member of the Energy Subcommittee, and his priorities, as always, have included creating a business climate that fosters job growth and robust economic activity, which we certainly have seen in North Dakota, and reducing our nation's budget and deficits, and leading, most importantly today, towards a comprehensive energy policy that adds to our energy supplies, not detracts from them, and encompasses all forms of energy, which we've done a great job in North Dakota. So, Senator, welcome as our guest today, and I'm going to turn it over for you for some opening comments, and then we'll jump over to Pete. Then we'll jump to questions.
Thanks, Ron. Really appreciate it. Pete, thank you as well. And to all the members of the North Dakota Petroleum Council that are joining us today, as well as the crew from Wyoming. Thanks for joining us today. But more importantly, thanks for what you're doing out there every single day, producing energy for America. You make things work. You make things go. That energy supply is vital. And we appreciate so much what you do. And of course, Senator Dr. Barrasso, thanks for being here. John is the ranking member on our Energy and Natural Resources Committee. He's also in our leadership team, and a guy that really understands energy and does just a fantastic job leading the way for our caucus in many, many respects on the right energy policy for this country. So thanks, Doc. Really appreciate it and all that you do. Just a few words. Obviously, I am incredibly proud of our guys. What they've done in the Bakken is truly remarkable. We started on it back when I was governor. I started as governor in 2000, and it wasn't long after that we got going. We tried to create the right kind of legal, regulatory, tax, and so forth climate to encourage development in our state. And of course, then these great innovators went to work and really transitioned from the vertical type of wells they were drilling at the time, which was diminishing investment, and companies were leaving our state. And they said, hey, we can make this Bakken work, this tight shale play with hydraulic fracturing and directional drilling. And by golly, they developed it. And of course, with the right kind of approach at the federal level, which we had in the last administration, the Trump administration, we actually grew our production to 1.5 million barrels a day, second only to the state of Texas. Since then, it's declined some. And of course, that's been a number of factors. But of course, the factor right now that's really creating the problem is the Biden administration and the wrong approach that they're taking to energy development and energy production. They need to take the handcuffs off and allow our oil and gas producers to do what they do best, which is to produce that energy for America with the best environmental stewardship in the world. And instead, we have a president who came in and not only immediately started issuing executive orders to stop things like the Keystone XL pipeline, but also to put a moratorium on production on federal lands, both onshore and offshore, start a regulatory blizzard that makes it very difficult to get the permits and do the things you need to actually drill the wells, and of course won't let us develop the LNG facilities we need to export natural gas to our closest friend and allies, including our allies in Western Europe who are trying to help Ukraine, along with our help for Ukraine as they fight against Russia. And in many respects, that's a big driver of the inflation we're seeing. This administration's energy policy is a big part of causing that inflation problem, along with too much spending. But energy is in every product that you buy, and in many cases, it's a majority of the cost of the product. And so here we've got an administration holding us up instead of empowering. That's the term we use for our energy plan in North Dakota. Instead of empowering our energy providers, which is what they need to do, which not only, of course, is an economic issue and an inflationary issue, but a national security issue. And so certainly Senator Barrasso and I are working to get the right policies in place that will help all of you continue to do, as I say, what you do better than anybody in the world, and that's produce energy for Americans. So I'll stop there and turn to Senator Barrasso. And again, thank him, not just for being here today, but for his leadership on energy.
Pete?
Well, thanks, Senator Hoeven. Thanks, Senator Barrasso, for being here today. Pete Obermuller with the Petroleum Association of Wyoming. Senator Hoeven, your remarks are well taken. I'm constantly amazed at how many folks from Wyoming work and live around the Powder River Basin and then commute to North Dakota to do some work in the Bakken and vice versa. We really share a lot in terms of our industries. We share a lot in terms of our culture, and I just appreciate the two of you being here together. Senator Barrasso, it's great to see you as always. I'll introduce you real quick and turn it over to you for some remarks, and then we'll go to questions. And before I do, just want to say thanks to Ron Ness and my friends at NDPC, who've been nothing but helpful to the Petroleum Association of Wyoming, and our partnership is very well appreciated. Senator Barrasso was sworn into the United States Senate in 2007, having represented people in Natrona County, Wyoming, in the state Senate. In November of 2018, he was reelected to the U.S. Senate with more than 67% of the vote. He's the third ranking member of the Senate Republican leadership, chairman of the Senate Republican Conference. He serves on committees that directly impact Wyoming's economy, and North Dakota's for that matter: energy interests, public lands, national parks, and trade. And in addition to other committee assignments, he's the ranking member of Senate Energy and Natural Resources Committee. Senator Barrasso is known by many as Wyoming's doctor. During his 24 years as an orthopedic surgeon, Barrasso served as president of the Wyoming Medical Society and was named Wyoming Physician of the Year. Senator Barrasso, thanks so much for joining us today, and I'll turn it over to you.
Well, thanks, Pete, and it's great to be here with my friend and colleague, John Hoeven. We work very closely together. John and I tomorrow, we're in the Energy Committee room right now in the United States Senate, and tomorrow at this table where we're sitting, we're going to have the Secretary of Interior to question her on the issues in terms of the oil and gas leasing ban, in terms of the way that the administration is making decisions, kind of one decision to not allow oil and gas exploration, not allowing the permitting, and we're going to specifically bore in on those issues. And John, yesterday at this table, we had the Premier of Alberta, Canada, who was here talking about the true impacts of the decision by the Biden administration on day number one to kill the Keystone XL pipeline, and what that's meant for American energy and the costs for people, what it's meant for our economy, and we can answer questions about that as well. It is just so interesting. Energy is the master resource. You talked about Putin. He's used energy as a weapon. And as somebody from Wyoming, where oil and gas is so much our bread and butter, as it is with North Dakota, and we are in this fight together because our states are so similar in terms of our economies and the hardworking people that live there, what we know is we do it well. We think of energy security, we think of economic strength, we think of environmental stewardship, and I would put North Dakota and Wyoming way at the top of the list in terms of how well we do things to protect our economy while strengthening, or to protect the environment while strengthening our economy, because we're much better as a nation if we're selling energy to our friends rather than having to buy it from our enemies. And now look what Biden's doing. He's talking to Venezuela, Iran. He asked Russia to produce more before we put this ban in place, rather than allowing us to get it out of the ground. And on a day today, this is what the 9th day in a row where gas prices at the pump have hit the highest ever in the history of the country. I think 456 today. There is not a state in the union where it's under $4 a gallon. You know, people driving by and see that, they wince, because they realize that means that's money they're not going to have for groceries, which are also up due to inflation under Biden. They're not going to have that money to buy things for their kids or for clothing or to take a vacation this summer. All of those things because of the policies of this administration. The day that Donald Trump left office, gasoline at the pump was $2.38 on average nationwide. Now it's $4.56.
Unbelievable.
You cannot believe the impact and the hurt that has been caused by the policies of this administration. So no matter where you are in the country, you're thinking about energy and people thinking about how we're going to be able to get it more out of the ground. And I think the impacts are there. People realize how important it is and how wrong-headed the policies of the administration have been. I was just looking at this. Cynthia Lummis and I wrote this column, it was in the Casper Star Tribune, How to Restore America's Energy Dominance. We talk about this, energy dominance. We were there. Now we become energy dependent again. Why? Because of bad policies by an administration who is more beholden to the climate extremists than they are to the good of the people of this country, who are paying the price for these very radical, extreme, and dangerous policies which are hurting us all. So I'm looking forward to the questions.
Thank you, gentlemen. And I want to elaborate a little bit on Pete's comment. It's interesting to look through the list of attendees today and just see how many common folks that we have, whether it be oil producers doing business in the Powder River and in the Bakken, service companies that Pete and I both work for and that employ thousands of constituents of you guys. So it's fantastic to do this today. By the way, we will post this on our website. I know I think both organizations will post this on their website. If you have a question, you can, again, either put it in chat or raise your hand. Senator Barrasso, we've got a question in the chat room there, which may be a good opening question for your committee. And I've got a bunch of others that we've been emailed or texted. But essentially, it's the Biden administration wants to end fossil fuels, but they never describe how that will actually be accomplished, or, as you discussed, the impacts to Americans in terms of cost at the pump, to families that are, I've got 3 teenage children, and getting them to want to go fill their gas tank right now is a challenge. They want dad to come along all the time. But how are they going to replace this energy source if they truly do what they seem every day, doubling down? I was in Washington last week, and Senator Hoeven, maybe you can comment on this. It did seem like we had turned a page in terms of how the importance of American energy production has elevated in our nation's capital, and hopefully to those non-producing states. We call them consuming states versus producing states. So if you guys want to tackle that one, then we'll jump over to Pete if he's got some questions, or back to the chat.
Well, if you listen to them, they're going to do it with sun, wind, and wishful thinking. I mean, that's it. The math doesn't work. We need all of the energy. We need the renewables, but we certainly need the oil, the gas, the coal, the uranium for nuclear power. We need it all. The world demand for uranium is for all energy sources. And I've been thinking about uranium because we're doing some new activities in Wyoming in that power. So we need it all. And this Biden administration just has this, well, the person they put in charge of climate is John Kerry. And he talks at us with this smug superiority. Like if we were just as enlightened as he is, then things would be better. And I mean, we've talked about this in the committee, that we need it all, and we do it better than anyone else in the world. And that's what we need to do to return America to energy dominance. That would be better for everybody. It would be better for us. It'd be better for our national security, for our energy security, for economic security across the board. So they don't do math. They don't think it through as to how they're going to be able to supply America with what we need to power our country, to power our military, to power the nation, and the jobs that make such a difference to our home states as well as to the whole country.
Right. And I would add that, the right kind of energy policy actually enables us to produce more energy from all sources. We're doing it with the best. When we talk about oil and gas production, when we talk about what our states are doing with the new coal technologies as well, nobody does it better than we do. So we produce the most energy, the most dependably, with the lowest cost and the best environmental stewardship, we need to empower that. And then the people that are part of this symposium today are amazing companies that are developing new technologies in coal. We will provide that energy that our nation needs. And it's not just a huge issue in terms of great jobs and employing people and growing our economy. It's also, you know, as we just got done talking about, a huge issue in terms of not having the kind of inflation that we have now, but it's also a national security issue. That's what we're seeing so directly, not only for us here at home, but our allies as well. As Senator Barrasso said earlier, Putin's trying to use energy as a weapon. Nobody can use energy as a weapon against us if we produce it ourselves. If we produce it ourselves. So it is absolutely a national security imperative that we get this energy policy right. And that's why we have to continue to work to change what this administration is doing and get the right energy policy in place for this country.
Because it seems that, and we've talked about this, it seems that this Biden administration is committed to keeping energy prices and gas at the pump high for a long period of time. I mean, otherwise, why would they be out there strangling our production of energy? It's fascinating. So the president gave a press conference last week and he said it's Putin's price hike. The very next day, Department of Interior and the president canceled
Leases,
Lease-
federal
leases.
leases.
Alaska
And
the
Gulf
Gulf,
of Mexico, yep.
3 major leases. You know, you can't have it. People see through this. They see through the fact that the president has lost all credibility in terms of, go ahead.
And that's right on. And it's not just, you know, Ron, you said it very well, that pain at the pump that everybody feels. Look at our farmers who provide that food supply. You know, the cost of, let alone the cost of fuel, the cost of fertilizer, if they can even get it. And it's not just an economic imperative. Again, I go back, it's a national security imperative. Look what's going on in the world. If we can't produce that energy, then rogue actors like Russia have power over not only us, but our allies. So I think that's really key in terms of, as we talk to the people of this country, whether it's the producing states or the consuming states, as you talked about, Ron, the message from all of us has to be back to this administration and anyone else. We need this for economic reasons, but we need it for national security reasons as well.
Senator
We
Hoeven,
didn't even get to diesel yet.
Unbelievable. Add $1.
Yeah.
On top of
And
the,
what's that going to do to our
on top of the
producers?
prices you're paying for a gallon of gas.
Yes, farmers and ranchers.
Unbelievable. And again, the fertilizer, so that
Yeah.
pervades the food cost, and look at the strain it puts on our farmers, you know.
your
If we
conversation.
don't have any questions, we'll just interview each other.
Yeah,
Did you
that's
have
great.
did you have more than one question? Because we'll keep going on that one if you want.
Well, I'm going to let you keep going on that one. We've got questions queuing up in here, but I've got one for you because of your conversation about national security. I was delighted to see in the news recently, Senator Barrasso, that you took a trip to Ukraine and got to see firsthand, well, lots of things, I imagine, and you can tell us anything you want to about that, but particularly interested if you had discussions with folks over there about the energy crunch that they're experiencing, really the energy crisis they're experiencing, and what you saw over there that you'd be willing to share with us.
Well, certainly Europe realizes the mistake they've made over the years by becoming more and more dependent on Vladimir Putin and Russia for energy sources. Yesterday at the hearing with the Alberta Premier Kenny, he said, "Did Joe Biden cancel the wrong pipeline?" Because he canceled the Keystone XL pipeline, but he approved the Nord Stream 2 pipeline from Russia to Germany.
Just stunning.
Stunning. So Europe realizes what a terrible mistake they've made. It was really, I think, important to go to Ukraine. These people are there fighting for their lives, fighting for their freedom, fighting for their country, and Putin will not stop until he is stopped. And I want to make sure that the people of Ukraine get everything they need in terms of weapons, in terms of ammunition, in terms of resources to be able to carry that fight to Putin. You've seen a couple new countries have just signed up to join NATO. It's interesting when you see Sweden and Finland decide. Sweden has been neutral since the days of Napoleon. They have been out of this anything in a command. Now they have an up-to-date military, so they're going to be an addition to NATO. You're going to know how to fight. Finland has an 830-mile border with Russia, and they have a very modern military. They say February 24th changed everything. When Putin started just mass murdering people of Ukraine, they know they could be next. So that's why we see such an involvement of people uniting. Putin miscalculated everything. He overestimated the power of his own military, underestimated the willpower of the people of Ukraine to join the fight. And I'm ready to stand with them to make sure they have what they need, because they can win, and they will. There is devastation all across Ukraine. People are under siege, but there is a willpower and determination, and President Zelensky has really united the people of Ukraine to join the fight and to take it to the Russians.
All right, gentlemen, we're going to take a question from Corey Fong here, and I'll give Corey pop himself in, but we're going to try and focus on some solutions. I've got a BLM permitting issue that's critical that I get to you guys, and I'm going to suggest to the Senator Barrasso that maybe you should just hold this format for your next Energy Committee hearing and let folks really tell the rest of the members of your committee what's going on across this country. So, Corey Fong, please ask your question.
Yeah, thanks, Ron, and thanks for making the time today, Senators Hoeven and Barrasso. As you may know, WBI Energy, one of our MD Resources family of companies, has natural gas in the region. We have 3,800 miles of pipe. Then we are the largest Bakken takeaway capacity provider in the Bakken region, and we certainly appreciate all the support over the years that you've provided. Senator Barrasso, our WBI leaders met you last September in DC, and it was really a nice opportunity. And of course, Senator Hoeven, we recently saw you here in Bismarck. But first of all, just quick, sincere thanks for all the work that you are doing on the Senate Energy and Natural Resources Committee to hold FERC accountable. Your March Senate Energy and Natural Resources Committee hearing, I think, was critical. That was the hearing with the FERC commissioners to get them to understand that they needed to pull back on their proposed natural gas policy statements and convert them into drafts, take comments, and then also, make sure that it's not applying to current projects. I think that was a critical turning point, and we appreciate all the work that you're doing, and we hope that the Senate Energy and Natural Resources Committee will continue to play that oversight role. My question is, as you're starting to think about confirmation of another FERC commissioner here coming up, what are your thoughts on that? Because of course, that is another very important role for the Senate Energy and Natural Resources Committee, is the confirmation of FERC commissioners. So again, thanks for all your great work. Thanks for your service and dedication to our industry and for taking time today. And thanks, Ron, for hosting.
I'll start with some general comments about the FERC and then let Dr. Russell maybe comments more specifically on the nomination process as well. Obviously, we're pushing very hard on FERC, and you know that, Corey, to expedite approvals of these pipelines and other LNG facilities, all those kind of things. And I think that we are having some success, because you saw they pulled back on their 2 orders. When Chairman Glick had talked about those orders, he was talking about doing the CO2 analysis as part of granting those orders. And of course, that just lengthens the process. When we, challenged him on that, he came back and said, oh, well, no, you're going to end up having to do that anyway, because somebody who's opposed to the groups that are opposed to any kind of pipeline or LNG facilities or anything else, they're going to challenge you in court anyway. So you're going to have to do that CO2 analysis. So that's not going to lengthen the process. We don't believe that that's true at all, because it lengthens the FERC process, and those court challenges are probably going to come anyway in whatever cases that, they're going to be present. So we push back very hard on that. We have got them to withdraw those orders, and they are looking at them now in terms of draft form and comment period. So I think that is some progress, but we remain challenged to get a FERC that will expedite these approvals with a common sense approach, but we're pushing on it very hard to do exactly that.
Yeah. And it is interesting, the nominees that have been coming out of this administration generally have been really on the far, far left side of the spectrum here. You'd think that pipeline shouldn't be that much of a difficulty. In a 50-50 Senate, where there are a number of Republicans who believe a president ought to have his nominees in place, his team, we have still gotten to a number of times where there are 50-50 ties, and they have to have the vice president come in to break the tie, which shows you how far left a number of these nominees are if we have every Republican against them, especially when you have people with this mindset that the president ought to have what he wants. So they have to bring the vice president in to break the tie, which means they have to have all 50 Democrats here. So you had somebody out with a stroke, you have somebody out now with a stroke, you had somebody out with COVID last week, and then they have the vice president waiting in the wings. That talks to me about just how liberal these nominees are, that we've had to expose to the American public and to the rest of the Senate to say, look, this is what this person has tweeted, done to stop energy, what their positions are. This one to be the head of electricity we had her here and she said, they asked people in Boston where electricity rates are at the highest, and she's from there and she's a state senator there, are they paying too much for electricity? She said, no, they weren't, which is why I said a little earlier that this administration seems committed to high energy prices and then high food prices and ongoing inflation to people all across the country because of who they're appointing. So, we're trying to take back the Senate, of course, to get me as full chair of the committee. Joe Manchin is a good partner on energy issues. He comes from an energy state. When it comes to the president's nominees, he's not always with us on that, which is why we need to get a majority in the Senate, and which is what we're working on all across the country. So the FERC is just one, but we're seeing it all across the board, seeing it in the economic sector, the energy sector, we're seeing it in public health issues across the board, and that's the fight that we're in right now. So for those of you who follow politics closely, and I know Pete does, if you with your long history in Wyoming, looking at the list of who's on board, we have people that really know politics well. That's what's happening now with who they're putting on. They want to put people in place who are just dogmatically pay homage, worship at the altar, if you will, of the climate extremists who want to do things dramatically, unilaterally, immediately, much to the detriment of our country and our economy, which is the national security component that you talked about earlier.
The key, I think, back to specifically Corey, is we have to work with Joe Manchin to try to get somebody who understands that there's got to be some common sense here. And we both have very good relationships with Joe. I've worked with him as governor and, of course, here in the Senate. Senator Barrasso, as ranking member, has good relations. So, I mean, the key there is we'll try to work with Joe and try to get somebody with common sense, or if, as Dr. Barrasso said, if they give us, one of these extremists again, hold up the process, and again, it comes back to the right kind of regulation empowers investment. So we get the facilities we need to move the resources around cost effectively and safely, dependably. And that means you have to have understandable, certain, dependable regulation, but also regulators that apply them that way.
I mean, you talk about exploration, you talk about production. People need certainty. Capital is a coward if there's no certainty, and you can't expect 100% certainty, but it's there. You need it.
Senators, we got a couple of questions. Will take us to a little bit of a dive into some wonkery here, because the question really from David in the chat was, if the Republicans do take over the Senate in 2023, what can be done? What do you think that you can do in the Senate? And it calls to mind that both of you have bills that you have introduced really recently on these things that kind of give us a little bit of preview of the types of things that perhaps could be done. Could both of you talk for a little bit about the work you're doing there and what you think is possible in 2023?
Yeah, again, I think whether, first in terms of these nominations, then we truly are in a position to hold up some of these people that are extreme and force the administration to we may not get exactly what we want, but force people who are reasonable and more common sense, and that we can hopefully better work with. So it's really important in terms of the whole nomination aspect, and not just in terms of these various agencies and so forth, but think about it in terms of the court. That's a very, very important consideration, so that you don't have these judges that are going to legislate from the bench and hold up things that we need done for the good of the country and the right kind of energy policy. And then in terms of legislation, again, we both have bills that will put the right kind of energy plan in place. And the key there is we'd be in much better position to move them through the Congress and hopefully force the Biden administration to work with us on some of these common sense solutions.
Well, one is called the Lease Now Act, so that they have to resume the leases, the oil and gas leases that they've continued to slow down, drag their feet on. And the other, this came up yesterday when we were visiting with the premier of Alberta, said, who makes the decisions? And there it's the provinces. Here it's Washington, D.C. It's a matter of who decides. And it seemed to me we'd do much better if the people in Wyoming were making decisions, the people in North Dakota were making decisions, especially in our state with public lands. I have something called we have really good staff people. They come up with great names. This is called the Onshore Act. Opportunities for the nation and states to harness onshore resources for energy. Spell that onshore.
I'm a co-sponsor of that one, by the way.
You
That's
are,
great.
right
Yeah,
there.
commend your staff. Great name for it. Yeah.
And Ted Cruz and Roger Marshall, Cynthia Lummis, of course, Rish, and it empowers states to manage the development and production of the oil and gas on federal lands within our own borders. Say, you don't have to go back to Washington and say, Mother, may I? It's let's make those decisions within the state borders.
Appreciate that. I've got a question, Senator, from Wyoming's press corps here. I think Kristen, you can let in Valeria Fugate with KGWN's got a question for you, I believe. Valeria, you're able to unmute. You could ask your question.
Let's turn it on. Oh, sorry, senators. Good morning. Oh, if I could just get the button to work. Here we go. Turn it on.
We can hear you just fine. You can go ahead and ask.
All right. So I'm interested in finding out a little bit more about your meeting with the Secretary of Interior, what you're anticipating, how far you will progress, and also with your meeting with our Canadian neighbors from Alberta. What discussions are you having potentially to further this XL pipeline? I know it will be beneficial for Alberta. Alberta is an oil and gas and ag province, so this would greatly benefit them as well. So I'm sure they would be completely on board on progressing that. What further discussions are you planning on having with our Canadian neighbors, and how far do you think you will get with the Secretary of the Interior, and what are you hoping to get out of that meeting?
Well, thanks, Valeria. It's good to be with you again. Look forward to sitting down with you in the studio at Channel 5 again in Cheyenne. What we heard yesterday from the Premier of Alberta was that the decision by Joe Biden to cancel the Keystone XL pipeline was bad for our energy supply. It was bad for our economy, bad for the environment, and it was bad for international security. And that's why people in Wyoming today are paying close to $4.50 a gallon compared to the $2.38 a gallon they were paying the day that Joe Biden became president. And that's what you're going to hear if you go down any place in Cheyenne and ask people what's the number one thing on their mind. It's the fact that energy costs are so high and wages are just not keeping up with the inflation that they're living under. People are falling further behind. So tomorrow we have in this same room the Secretary of Interior, and we're going to point out to her how damaging her policies and the administration's policies have been for the pocketbook issues of the people from all across the country. She's from New Mexico, and people in New Mexico are suffering just as they are in North Dakota, just as they are in Wyoming. And we want to continue to make the case that it is time to resume the oil and gas leases. We have the energy in the ground in America. This is an administration that will just not let us get it out.
That's right. I mean, look at what the Biden administration did. They came back and said, oh, initially, moratorium on any development of energy on federal lands, whether it's onshore or offshore. Then just recently comes back and says, okay, now we're going to change that. We're going to allow you to do it on 20%, and we're going to raise the royalty rates. So they just now said, okay, we're going to keep 80% of it, the moratorium on, so you can't produce on any of those. And we're going to raise the royalty rates. So again, driving up energy costs. It's the very time that we have this inflation in gas is at $4.50 a gallon at the pump across America. That's what they do. And then they continue the regulatory blizzard. So even if you can get a lease on the federal land, you can't actually drill it because you can't permit it. That's what has to change. And that's what we're going to talk to her about.
So how are they proposing that we continue to be functional within our nation without tapping into our reserves? What ideas are they proposing so that we maintain functionality within our nation and our energy needs?
Yeah, well, it's an excellent point that you make there, Valeria, because the Biden administration came up with a gimmick. to deal with that. And you talking tapping into our reserves, that's exactly what Joe Biden did. He said he's going to release 1 million barrels of oil a day from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve for the next 6 months.
And you can see how well that hasn't worked, right?
It has not relieved the pain at the pump. What it has done is make us more vulnerable to the fact that this Strategic Petroleum Reserve is there in case of a real emergency. And he's drawing it down, which makes it even harder if there's a real emergency to cope with it. So his solution was a gimmick and it failed.
All right, gentlemen, we are blowing up our chat line. We've done this a lot over the last 2.5 years, and you guys we have struck a topic here today that is of great interest, and we've got a lot of discussion going on about ag input costs, and I hope North Dakota Ag Commissioner Doug Goring is on the line, and I hope his ag friends from non-producing states turn up the heat on their congressional members as well. But Senator Hoeven, I want to just provide a little bit of backdrop on BLM, and Senator Barrasso can chime in on this, and then talk about a bill that you dropped this week regarding federal leasing. As prices go up, we continue to see BLM get slower and slower on permits. Yesterday, I was told by one of our North Dakota producers that he was told that there will be no more auto renewals of the 2-year permit. So you get a federal permit, generally you can't get there with a pipe. You got some other issues with endangered species, automatically renews. Now those things are all going to be sent to Washington. All permits are going to Washington. I also heard that at a meeting this week, Region 6 EPA director told oil regulators and industry officials from across the country that there's a moral obligation now for environmental justice when it comes to enforcement, and that despite obligations of the Constitution, that these moral obligations should be held in check. So as prices go up, it seems like they once again, even this week, are doubling down on their willingness to slow permits, slow activity, and then go out and punish the industry. So these are big issues that I hope can be raised in your discussions with federal regulators.
See, that goes right to the problem that I just mentioned a minute ago, Ron, and that is, sure, they can come in and say, oh, why aren't the energy companies drilling out the leases they have? Well, the reason they're not is because they're being held up by the regulations of this administration. And that's the whole point. So they're talking through their hat on that one. The example you're talking about here is a very good example to show that is precisely what they're doing. That's why the legislation that we're pushing, and we've included it in the onshore legislation bill that Dr. Barrasso just talked about, essentially that would say, okay, BLM, if you have no surface acres, if you have ownership of no surface acres, and you have a minority interest in the mineral acres, you should not be requiring a new permit or holding up the process. What is the sense of that? There is no surface disruption, and you are not a majority owner of the minerals. You're a minority owner. So you're disenfranchising the majority owners in the minerals. And on the surface acres, you got nothing to say about it anyway. So if you want to make this environmental argument about how, you don't want to rig there, there's no rig there. Back to what I said, the kind of common sense things that will produce more energy. And the irony here is you'll get better environmental stewardship. You'll get less CO2 emissions because the administration, instead of letting us do those things, is running around to places like Venezuela and OPEC that has much lower standards. So it doesn't make sense on either the energy front or the environmental front.
Thanks, Senators. A good question that's coming to me from text, kind of shifting gears just a little bit over to gas production, and kind of harkening back a little bit to Europe's energy crisis and all of that too. The question that came in is sort of recognizing, first off, just the level of effort and the technological inputs to making sure that we're producing in Wyoming and in North Dakota, but specifically in our gas fields, the cleanest possible fuels. And Wondering about the discussions about that in DC amongst your colleagues and amongst regulators and all of that, about the recognition, as you were mentioning, Senator Hoeven, the recognition of energy produced domestically being the cleanest, the most sustainable, the safest molecules that could be produced anywhere in the world, right here from people on this call.
It does seem in this hearing, and I'm thinking of some of our members, what they complain about with natural gas, and I'm talking about the Democrats on the committee, is flaring.
Mhm.
And you know, people would prefer, if you're producing, to capture that and sell it. But remember Obama, he wouldn't allow any permits for gathering lines because he just wanted to shut it down. He said, well, they're flaring it, we need to leave it in the ground. So he was trying to stop all fracking. And that was the issue there. And that's what we hear about here, which is why the question that somebody raised earlier about FERC and who's going to come on is such a big part of this. Because this is one way, if they don't allow the gathering lines, so then they don't give the permits, so that then there's flaring. That's what they seem to go after in the committee, the Democrats who are trying to shut down energy. But I would add, because you talked about national security, but Vladimir Putin has for years financed the environmental movement of Europe, because he didn't want any fracking to go on. It had nothing to do with geology being good or bad. He was just against it all the way, because he knew if they couldn't provide and find their own energy in Europe, they'd be more dependent upon him. So he is very shrewd with relation to energy and uses energy as a weapon. And we, under this administration, have been tying our hands behind our back, hurting the American public and hurting our national security and our energy security.
And let me add, to go to this point, if Europe gets natural gas, Western Europe gets natural gas from Russia, or if they get natural gas from us, the natural gas that they get from us is 41% less greenhouse gas emissions than what they get from Russia. So think about that. 41% less if we produce it. So if you really want the better environmental standards, then you let our producers go to work instead of, like I say, handcuff them.
All right, guys, we have North Dakota Ag Commissioner Doug Goring with a question. We got about a 2.5 minute call here. So Doug?
Good morning. Good to see
Hey,
you, Senator Hoeven. Senator Barrasso, thank you very much. One issue, and I'm glad you addressed the BLM issue because that is sort of in my portfolio, but beyond that, this issue that the administration has focused and turned attention towards the need for fertilizer plants and such, and it's actually directed USDA, and I can appreciate that, but the problem is, and I think many of us know this or will realize it after I say it, it's EPA that we need to look at how do we assist and help companies, organizations, and entities produce natural or produce nitrogen facilities, because we're not going to get it done when you have the EPA standing in the way of building and producing more. Plus, we have issues with siting. We have issues with permitting for phosphorus and potash facilities. This stuff has to be mined. It's not like it's produced out of thin air, much like nitrogen is. And I'm hoping that you'll be able to both address that issue in upcoming meetings, maybe with meetings with the president, the administration, and EPA officials, because quite frankly, we can give all this lip service, but we're not going to do anything to support food security or energy security for this country if we're going to continue to go down this road of, here, let's grab some headlines with helping food production in this country. But on the other hand, we're putting up restrictions, barriers, and roadblocks to stop and hinder that. So thank you very much. I appreciate all your hard work and efforts.
Thanks, Commish. Appreciate you and your advocacy for our great farmers and ranchers. And, you know, I sure share that. And right now, it's not just what's being done to them with the price of fuel, but as you say, the price of fertilizer, and then if they can even get it. And that's why we've got to do more of exactly what you just said. We need to do it right. I mean, you said absolutely what we need to do. I work on that through Energy and Natural Resources. Dr. Barrasso works on that not only as ranking member of this committee, but he's also on EPW. And that has jurisdiction over the you know, the relevant, all of the really, not only EPA, but other relevant agencies as well. We need to do more of just exactly what they're doing at Dakota Gasification Company, right? We need to take that, they're taking lignite coal, converting it to synthetic natural gas. They capture the CO2, use it for secondary or tertiary oil recovery, and then they take some of that natural gas stream and they produce anhydrous and urea from it. So instead of having to go all the way to Malaysia for our fertilizer, we're producing it right there in the Midwest. We need to do a lot more of that, and it's going to take exactly what you said to get, again, our great innovators in place to do it.
And I see that Holly is on the line as well from the University of Wyoming School of Energy Resources, the dean there, and we're committed to doing these sorts of things. We want to make sure we're producing energy as clean as we can, as fast as we can, and do it in ways that don't raise costs for American consumers. And this administration is exactly the opposite. They're doing things that actually aren't helping the environment, but are certainly hurting our economy. And that's the bell they're ringing there. People
Yeah,
can hear it
for the
for our,
vote.
for the.
All right, guys, I'm going to hand this over to Pete to wrap it up, but I would say that you're going to have to do rock, paper, scissors to see whether you're going to take this show on the road and fly fish in Wyoming or pheasant hunt in North Dakota. So Pete, thanks for help joining us today.
Ron, thank you, and thanks for your leadership and amongst all the trades and working together on all these things. Senators, really appreciate that you gave so much time to us and to our members today. It's quite unique to have this kind of access to two high-profile senators like this, and just really appreciate your time and all of your work on our behalf. It's so important to all of us. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Bet.